It is an ironic and tragic fact that this conference is being held at a time when the news about Vietnam has virtually disappeared from the front pages of American press, and the American people have all but forgotten the tiny nation for which we are in large measure responsible. This decline in public attention is due, I believe, to three factors. First, it is due in part to the amazing success of President Diem in meeting firmly and with determination the major political and economic crises which had heretofore continually plagued Vietnam. Secondly, it is due in part to the traditional role of American journalism, including readers and as well as writers, to be more interested in crises than in accomplishments, to give more space to the threat of war than the need for works, and to write larger headlines on the sensational omissions of the past than the creative missions of the future. Third and finally, our neglect of Vietnam is the result of one of the most serious weaknesses that has hampered the long-range effectiveness of American foreign policy over the past several years, and that is the overemphasis upon our role as volunteer fire department for the world. Whenever and wherever fire breaks out, in Indochina, in the Middle East, in Guatemala, in Cyprus, in the Formosan Straits, our firemen rush in, wheeling up all their heavy equipment, and resorting to every known method of containing and extinguishing the blaze. The crowd gathers. The usually successful efforts of our able volunteers are heartily applauded. Then the firemen rush out to the next conflagration, leaving the grateful but still stunned inhabitants to clean up the rubble, pick up the pieces, and rebuild their homes with whatever resources are available. The role, to be sure, is a necessary one, but it is not the only role to be played, and the others cannot be ignored. A volunteer fire department halts but rarely prevents fires. It repels but rarely rebuilds. It meets the problems of the present but not of the future. And while we are devoting our attention to the communist arson in Korea, there is smoldering in Indochina. We turn our efforts to Indochina until the alarm sounds in Algeria, and so it goes. Of course, Vietnam is not completely forgotten by our policymakers today. I could not, in honesty, make such a charge, and the facts would easily refute it. But the unfortunate truth of the matter is that, in my opinion, Vietnam would be in all likelihood be receiving more attention from our Congress and administration and greater assistance under our aid programs if it were in imminent danger of communist invasion or revolution. Like those peoples of Latin America and Africa whom we have very nearly overlooked in the past decade, the Vietnamese may find that their devotion to this cause of democracy and their success in reducing the strength of local communist groups have had the ironic effect of reducing American support, yet the need for that support has in no way been reduced. No one contends that we should now rush all our firefighting equipment to Vietnam, ignoring the Middle East or any other part of the world. But neither should we conclude that the cessation of hostilities in Indochina removed that area from the list of important areas of United States foreign policy. Let us briefly consider exactly what is America's stake in Vietnam. First, Vietnam represents the cornerstone of the free world in Southeast Asia, the keystone to the arch, the finger in the dike. Burma, Thailand, India, Japan, the Philippines, and obviously Laos and Cambodia are among those whose security will be threatened if the red tide of communism overflowed into Vietnam. In the past, our policymakers have sometimes issued contradictory statements on this point, but the long history of Chinese invasions of Southeast Asia being stopped by Vietnamese warriors should have removed all doubt on this subject. Moreover, the independence of a free Vietnam is crucial to the free world in fields in the military. Her economy is essential to the economy of Southeast Asia, and her political liberty is an inspiration to those seeking to obtain or maintain their liberty in all parts of Asia, and indeed the world. The fundamental tenets of this nation's foreign policy, in short, depend in considerable measure upon a strong and free Vietnamese nation. Secondly, Vietnam represents a proving ground of democracy in Asia. However, we may choose to ignore it or deprecate it. The rising prestige of influence of Communist China in Asia are unchallengeable facts. Vietnam represents the alternative to communist dictatorship. If this democratic experiment fails, if some 1 million refugees have fled the totalitarianism of the North only to find neither freedom nor security in the South, then weakness, not strength, will characterize the meaning of democracy in the minds of still more Asians. The United States is directly responsible for this experiment. It is playing an important role in the laboratory where it is being conducted. We cannot afford to permit this experiment to fail. Third, and in somewhat similar fashion, Vietnam represents a test of American responsibility and determination in Asia. If we are not the parents of Little Vietnam, then surely we are the godparents. We presided at its birth, we gave assistance to its life, we have helped to shape its future. As French influence in the political, economic, and military spheres has declined in Vietnam, American influence has steadily grown. This is our offspring. We cannot abandon it. We cannot ignore its needs. And if it falls victim to any of the perils that threaten its existence, communism, political anarchy, poverty, and the rest. The United States, with some justification, will be held responsible, and our prestige in Asia will sink to a new low. Fourth and finally, America's stake in Vietnam and her strength and her security is a very selfish one, for it can be measured in the last analysis in terms of American lives and American dollars. It is now well known that we were at one time on the brink of war in Indochina, a war which could well have been more costly, more exhausting, and less conclusive than any war we had ever known. The threat to such war is not now altogether removed from the horizon. Military weakness, political instability, or economic failure in the new state of Vietnam could change almost overnight the apparent security which has increasingly characterized that area under the leadership of President Diem. And the key position of Vietnam in Southeast Asia, as already discussed, makes inevitable the involvement of this nation's security in any new outbreak of the trouble. This is a revolution we can, we should, we must offer to the people of Vietnam, not as charity, not as a business proposition, not as a political maneuver, nor simply to enlist them as soldiers against communism or as shadows of American foreign policy, but a revolution of their own making, for their own welfare and for the security of freedom everywhere. The communists offered them another kind of revolution, glittering and seductive in its superficial appeal. The choice between the two can be made only by the Vietnamese people themselves. But in these times of trial and burden, true friendships stand out. As Premier Diem recently wrote a great friend of Vietnam, Sergeant Mansfield, it is only in winter that you can tell which trees are evergreen. And I am confident that if this nation demonstrates that it has not forgotten the people of Vietnam will demonstrate that they have not forgotten us.